I wasted 1,000 hours trying to learn to draw. I didn't understand one crucial lesson about learning, and in this video we're going to talk about it and how you can avoid it. I learned this the hard way and it was awful. It caused me so much more doubt, anxiety, frustration, and I nearly quit a bunch of times as well. So at the age of 19, I had the bright idea to drop out of college to pursue arts. And when your day one drawing looks like this, that's enough to turn any of your parents' hairs grey. Now, I was very lucky. My family was incredibly supportive, and so were a few of my friends, but the majority of people thought that I was an absolute idiot. I remember when I actually told a bunch of my friends I was doing this, I was in a big group and like 3 of them dropped to the back straight away and instantly started talking about how I was throwing my life away and I was a complete idiot and it was never going to work. But I was determined and I was like, I'm going to prove them wrong. So I set myself a schedule to draw 40 hours a week. And let me tell you, it was an absolute shit show. I remember being so tense the entire time I was sitting and drawing, and I would actually bite my teeth so hard that they would get really sore. I was just really kind of focused and just grind my teeth and let's go, and it was rough. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, had no idea about learning or about discipline, but I was trying my absolute best. Just my best wasn't very good yet. Now, in the beginning, I did feel some progress. My drawings weren't getting better, but I was learning all this new stuff. I was learning about like proportions of the head and how light and shadow works and all these different things. So I thought, I'm on the right track here. If I just put my head down and keep working, my drawings are going to get better over time. But here's the thing. A couple of months went by and I was looking at my drawings and they were still basically exactly the same. And at this point, a little bit of doubt starts creeping. I start to think, these things should be better by now. I've put hundreds of hours in. Surely this should be better. But still, I was like, no, just trust the process. Keep going. They're going to improve. Then 2 more months went by and things still weren't improving. And at this point, that kind of little seed of doubt was starting to grow a lot. I started to really be like, oh my god, is this like a terrible idea? If I just like throw my life away, is this all like talent? Maybe I'm just like not somebody who can do this. And this started to really concern me, and it started to show up in my kind of day-to-day practice as well, because half the time I was focused on, oh my god, is this actually going to work, versus focusing on what I was actually doing. And it was a really kind of difficult and challenging time, but I thought, I've dropped out, I kind of have to keep going, let's just keep doing this and just pray that this is going to work out. Then another couple of months went by and things still really hadn't improved. And by this point, I was like getting pretty terrified. And I kept on thinking about having to tell everyone that I was like, had bailed and was not going to do this anymore. And they were all right and it was a bad idea and I should never have started this. And it really sucked. And at this point, I was like, I'd done like basically like 1,000 hours, which is a lot of work, and still basically saw no progress whatsoever. And I was like, oh my god, what have I done? I've just spent all this time, and as far as I can tell, I've just wasted all of it. Or did I? See, after this point, things started to get interesting. I did a couple of drawings and I was like, wait a minute, I couldn't do that before. This feels like some progress here. I think I'm actually getting better at this. And I was really excited by this, and I just kept on going, kept on pushing, and then more drawings happened. I was like, oh my god, I definitely couldn't do this before. And then right around sort of a month into this kind of new period of feeling some growth, I did this Russian master study. I can't remember the artist's name, don't know who it was, but I did this drawing. And at this point I was like, holy shit, I definitely could not do this before. This is like massively beyond what I could do. Like, I'm gonna be amazing at this. I can do it all. This is great. And I was so excited. But that initial excitement kind of faded pretty quickly because I found my skills actually dropped back down. I kind of increased by like 10 points, let's say, and then I dropped back down to like 5. So I was like, god damn, maybe I just got lucky, I was copying someone else's work, I was studying their work for that, maybe it was just that. But I thought, you know what, I did do those drawings, I did see some improvement, I'm just going to keep going, head back down, let's keep working. For 6 long months. So this second period wasn't as hard as the first, but it was still difficult. I didn't really understand what was happening, why my skills had dropped back down, and why I wasn't improving, and what the hell caused that big spurt of growth. But I just thought, let's keep going, let's see what happens. And then I found myself one day just sitting down and doing these 2 drawings. And then the next few days I did these ones as well. And I was like, oh my God, these are like so far beyond what I thought I even was possible, at this point over a year ago. And I was so excited. And that horse drawing is still to this day one of my favorite things I've ever created. So I spent a couple of days just kind of like basking in this joy of like having done it and having got better, and feeling this sense of improvement, and now drawing at a level that I thought was basically impossible for me a year before. But I also had this question, like, what had happened here? Because I'd put in so much work, yet it felt like it all only showed up in really 2 moments over the course of the entire year. And that's when I discovered this concept. And if I'd known about this that first year, and to be honest, a lot of time after, would have been so much easier, so much more enjoyable, and I actually would have improved a lot faster if I just understood this one thing. So I'm talking about the dip, and this is a term popularized by the marketer Seth Godin. And basically, when we start something, when we want to achieve a goal or learn something, we tend to think our progress is going to look something like this, when actually it tends to look a lot more like this. Now, the problem with this is that if you don't understand the dip, at best you're going to be deeply unprepared and find it absolutely miserable, or at worst you're going to quit because you're not sure what's going on. Now, I first came across this concept in George Leonard's fantastic book Mastery, but he calls the dip the plateau, and he explains why everyone needs to go through the plateau and actually why it's essential for your growth. So to understand this fully and help you improve faster, we're going to look at 3 key areas. 1, where learning happens, 2, the mode of learning, and 3, making it easier, including avoiding pointless plateaus. This is a big one. If you don't understand this, you're going to make so many errors about the way you practice, and this is exactly what I did. So when I first got that big spurt of improvement, I started like micro-analyzing everything that I did in like the few weeks before when I started to feel that growth, and this was a huge mistake. The way I like to think about this is it's like if you plant a seed. For months, nothing will happen, and then out of nowhere, a plant will suddenly appear very quickly. Now, it wasn't that something magical happened when the plant started to appear, it's just that it had been growing underground for months, and what you are seeing is the result of that growth. So the real learning happens in the plateau, when things are keeping on going and it feels like nothing's really changing. You are improving, it's just not pushed through the surface yet. So the plateau is not something that we want to avoid. Quite the opposite, it's actually something that we want to embrace. However, there are a few traps that we need to avoid when it comes to embracing the plateau, so we make sure we're actually doing the right things and not just wasting our time. This is why we need to look at learning types. If you're in the wrong learning type or learning mode, you're not going to go the distance. You're going to hit plateaus and you're going to quit. So in George Leonard's book, he talks about 3 different learning types. Up first, we've got the dabbler. So everyone knows a dabbler. This is somebody who has perpetual shiny object syndrome. They get into something, they're all for it, they get mega excited about it, they go and get everything, they buy all the kit, they spend hundreds of pounds on stuff, and they get super excited, and then they hit a couple of challenges, realize it's harder than they thought it was, and quit very quickly. The next mode we've got is the obsessive. So we all know one of these too. They get into something and they start pushing at it really hard. They go all in, they start, just really focus on improving as much as they possibly can. And when they hit a plateau, unlike the dabbler, rather than quitting, they push harder. They work as much as they possibly can, they grit their teeth, they bear through it, and they try and basically smash their way through it. And this, while you can get some progress and maybe even get through a plateau or 2, you're going to find yourself burning out very quickly and removing all of your progress. Remember at the start when I talked about gritting my teeth so hard it hurt? Obsessive. Now, next up, we've got the hacker. So the hacker is somebody who basically gets to a level where they can kind of do it. They're just good enough. But as soon as they reach this point, they stop trying to improve and basically coast. Think of someone who's basically been doing something at the same level for years. They're just going along at that level. Now, none of these modes are actually bad, they all just serve different purposes. So for example, the dabbler is a great one to be in if you're trying to figure out what you want to do. Try loads of stuff, fail fast, fail quickly, see what resonates with you. The obsessive is great for that beginning period where you've got loads of enthusiasm, you just want to go, 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 go. It's a great mode to adopt. And the hacker is great if you've got loads of stuff going on in your life and you don't have the energy to really improve or level up at something, you just want to maintain it. Say if you're already in shape and you just want to kind of stay at that level, nothing wrong with that. But you also need to be aware of the limitations. So for example, with the dabbler, they tend to quit whenever they hit difficulty. So they might actually find what they do want to do and quit because it's difficult, not because the difficulty wasn't worth it. Big difference. But none of these modes are really focused towards embracing the plateau and long-term growth. To really make long-term progress, we need to look at the final learning mode, the master. So if you really want to get good and be in it for the long haul and see progress over time, the master is the mode you need to adopt. And there's a lot of things that make the master different, but for me, the biggest one all comes down to one simple point. And it can be summed up with this quote: "You can't walk properly if one eye is fixed on the destination." So I want you to imagine we've got two people walking. One person just wants to get from A to B. They've got something they want to do at that end point, and they spend the entire time while they're walking just focused on getting there as fast as possible. This seems like it would be the smart way to approach things. But then let's take a second person. They don't really focus on the goal. They have a general direction, but really they just love to walk. Who's going to walk further over time? The answer, of course, is the second one. Because they're in love with the process of walking, they will drastically outperform the person who just wanted to get from A to B. And this is really the secret to long-term growth. See, all the other modes are focused on results. The dabbler and the obsessive want to get results quickly, and the hacker just doesn't really care about them anymore, so doesn't improve. But the master is process focused, and they give the process their full attention. They know where they're going, but they don't focus on it. Instead, they focus on and fall in love with what they're currently doing. They only ever look at the destination, look at the result to course correct and make sure they're going on the right path. But really, it all comes down to what they're doing right now. And making this shift has had such a huge impact on my life. That first year, I was so fixated on getting better that I made the whole process miserable and massively slowed my progress down as well, because I wasn't willing to just kind of fall in love with what I was doing. I spent all my time thinking about the result and I getting caught up in anxieties and fears around it. But when you focus on the process, you find yourself just enjoying it more for one, and actually, funnily enough, doing it better because all your attention is focused on it. You give it your full force, your full effort, versus just halfway because you're focused on the result. And whenever I've forgotten this, it has cost me dearly. I actually quit art for 2 years because largely I didn't do this, and perfectionism, which I'll talk about in another video. Now that's all well and good to say, just fall in love with the process and leave you there, but how do you actually do that? Because you need to kind of get through those initial growth pains to get to the point where you start to enjoy it. So I'm going to give you 4 tips to help you get through those initial stages so that you start to fall in love with the process, not the result. So the first one is to use a different measuring stick. So oftentimes when we start learning something, we tend to think in a very kind of binary mode. Either we're doing it well or we're not. But somebody who understands learning realizes that it's not binary. There's actually like a million different little steps in between. One thing you can do here is take whatever it is that you're working on and break it down into different categories. So for drawing, it might be something like what's proportions, form, light, line quality, composition, all these different things, and then look at these individually and see if you're improving. Look for small improvements. This will help you stay motivated. On to point number 2, expecting too much of yourself. Now this is a massive one. I expected so much of myself so fast early on, and it really made things so much more difficult. What you need to do is just accept where you're at. You will improve, but don't try and push yourself too far. Accept where you are, be okay with it, and just celebrate all the little wins along the way. This takes time, but that time is going to pass anyway. So use it wisely. Don't be too hard on yourself. Accept where you're at. Number 3, find the sweet spot. Now this one would have just made my journey so much goddamn easier. And basically what you're looking for is when you sit down to do something to practice, you want to be in the Goldilocks zone. And this is basically where you're just pushing your abilities far enough that you're fully focused and it feels like a challenge, but it's not so big that you're getting stressed, and it's not so easy that you just can do it with your eyes closed. So you want to be in that zone. Now there's various ideas on this. One I've heard I think is quite good is if you're winning sort of like 7 out of 10 times, you're probably pretty good. So 6 to 8 times if you win out of 10, you're good. If you're kind of losing all the time, maybe pull the challenge back. If you're winning constantly, maybe make it more difficult. Now, probably the biggest one at number 4, work in projects. This I think was actually the biggest mistake I made, which was that I spent all of my time basically focusing on like the fundamentals, and I never did anything finished. And what this meant was that I never actually got a proper read on how much I was improving. So during those plateaus I had, they could have been a hell of a lot shorter if I just did more finished work along the way. So working in projects where you do something finished periodically and then analyze it and look for things to improve on is a great way to get a sense of progress and to avoid pointless plateaus. Most of the plateaus I went through in that first year were just really drawn out because I wasn't ever doing something finished. So make sure you're taking that time to do a complete piece of work so you can actually see the progress that you're making. Also, what's great about this is you get the reward of actually making something complete, rather than just having a massive stack of practice drawings like I did. But that's still not enough, because while you can follow these tips and get through those early growth pains, focus on the process, fall in love with it, it all doesn't matter if you're not actually using an effective learning strategy. So to know how to practice effectively, watch this.